All right, thank you very much, Carmen, for those headlines. Let's carry on now with the DA leader. Land, just simplify it for me, okay? Parliament, sixth Parliament, one of the big agenda items is Section 25. It's amendment. We've done all the song and dance ahead of election last year in terms of going to communities. What will the DA be putting forward? Are you going to oppose the amendment of Section 25?
Yes, of course we're going to oppose it, because you don't need to amend the Constitution to have meaningful land reform in South Africa. The Constitution is not the impediment to land reform. The high-level panel report commissioned by Kgalema Motlanthe says very clearly there's no constitutional impediment. The problem here is policy failure and legislative failure. There's things that we're messing around in Parliament now trying to amend the Constitution, which is going to require a two-thirds majority at the end of that process sometime in 2020. Why are we not sitting now discussing the expropriation bill, which will require 50% plus one majority in Parliament, that will actually start to talk about meaningful...
So your problem is expropriation without compensation.
Without compensation.
Essentially, people who have the land now, however they have acquired it, must be left alone, and you must look at all the other land that is untouched. You're talking about the Karoo and other places that are dry, that are not productive. I mean,
no, not at all. You can have expropriation in South Africa. Every government does it. In every country in the world. But it's the without compensation that is the problem. Now, before people start to go on about, well, you know, it's land's expensive, nowhere in the Constitution does it talk about market value. It mentions 5 baskets of issues that need to be looked at when assessing a value on the land. And I just don't think that there's been enough jurisprudence by this government over the course of the last 25 years looking at how we can ensure we have justice around the land question. I also disagree fundamentally. It is required. We had a legislative dispossession of land dating back almost a century. Glen Grey Act, the Pegging Act, the Group Areas Act, the 1913 Land Act. All of these were legislative dispossessions of land. We therefore require a legislative way to ensure that we have land justice.
Hence, people want to amend the Constitution, but we are saying when they amend it, they are messing around.
But you don't need to amend the Constitution. That's the thing. It is a red herring. We could be taking steps. Tomorrow, Parliament could convene and start to address this issue, releasing well-placed government-owned land, giving the farms that governments already acquired through the land reform process to the beneficiaries. We've been in a case with Mr. Rakhatse to just get him the right to be able to buy the property through the land reform program that he was promised by this government.
As somebody who's sitting with 30 hectares of land and they're only occupying 1 hectare, must just be left alone.
No, of course there's use of land, productive use of land. These are the things that we've looked at. But amending the Constitution is problematic, particularly Chapter 2, which is a Bill of Rights, because it opens a door then for every one of those rights to be up for negotiation. Again, anyone who reads Section 25 of the Constitution cannot possibly say it's an impediment to land reform. It talks about a requirement of government to develop policies.
It looks like you've got another thing to simplify, because a lot of black people are landless and they feel aggrieved. They were removed from their places. They were just chucked out like animals from land where their graves of their ancestors are. And when you come to them and say, no, don't worry about those things. We must just move on and just go and take lands that are unoccupied. You're not speaking to something that is close to their hearts, because they believe they've been dispossessed. And in order for them to be restored, it seems like if you just made a calculation, you're going to need trillions of rents that don't exist, right? Which then brings you to expropriation without compensation, right? Because that may only be the only practical thing you can do if you don't want to collapse the economy further.
But the problem is expropriation without compensation is going to collapse the economy, because it's going to remove any value for any land in South Africa. The largest landowner in South Africa is not individuals, it's banks. And you could have the potential to unstitch the entire banking system. And so who will be the main victims in that? It'll be young, upwardly mobile black South Africans who won't be able to access bond finance to be able to get properties. Because
looks like we have a long way to go on this one, and you seem to be a minority in Parliament. I hope you're going to be able to lobby the others to hear.
Well, I think there's some interesting dynamics that are still going to play out in Parliament, and that's whether the EFF and the ANC will find each other on it to get that two-thirds majority.
I think we found each other already, but the ANC probably doesn't want to hear that. But let's leave that alone. I'll come to Parliament, and I hope you'll give me an hour for us to look at parliamentary agenda of the 6th Parliament and so on. So I'll
the SAA strike, it looks like I'm going to be here for another week anyway.
Oh, no,
so
my goodness. Look, there's an issue, right, that I want you to address squarely for me.
Sure.
right? The attitude that both Patricia and Mashaba are telling us about, that there seems to be a willingness to look at wide areas, just for lack of a better description, right? Constantia, Bishop's Court, and so on, as opposed to Khayelitsha. In fact, the Human Rights Commission also had a very hard thing to say to the Western Cape government about toilets in Khayelitsha and so on. Mashaba raised the same thing about cutting off grass here and then leaving rotting infrastructure on the other side. Is there something that in your own vision making as a DA leader, you thought this thing must receive attention? Because I don't think those people were just being flippant about that kind of emphasis of where to spend resources of big cities like Cape Town and Joburg.
Well, I think if you look at the Cape Town city budget, a large portion of that actually goes into previously disadvantaged areas and uplifting them.
Yeah.
And I think on all government's own markers, if you look at the Household Access to Basic Services report, the city of Cape Town is way ahead of any other metro in the country. Is it acceptable yet? Absolutely not. Long way to go, but a lot further along than any other metro. But I was very clear today at the Federal Council meeting that our governments must govern in our image, and that our governments must show compassion and empathy where we govern. And that means that the focus has got to be on lifting people out of poverty, using cities to create jobs and being able to provide opportunities. But that doesn't mean, JJ, it's not a zero-sum game where you just simply ignore suburbs. You don't. It comes down to municipal efficiency. So, you know, there are areas where the capital requirements are far more than other areas, and we must spend the capital budget there, but we must also focus the operational budget on cutting the grass, painting the lines, fixing the traffic lights, and doing the ABC.
We'll be watching how that unfolds. The last question, you talk about empathy. How's your relationship with Helen Zille? You know, Helen Zille is not seen as to be too empathetic. You know, the colonialism tweet, by the way, whatever you may think of the public protector, he's found against Helen Zille, formally now, to say this colonialist nonsense was bad, right, in terms of even being against ethics in parliament, in governance, right? But the broader question is, you know, how are you going to align your messaging with somebody as strong-willed and strong-headed, I may say, like Helen Zille? I mean, surely you're not going to be supporting colonialism utterances and always defending racism and so on and so on. Whatever her explanations are, and she has plenty of explanation. But what voters want is empathy, not explanation.
Exactly, but I, you know, and I've been on record on that. I didn't agree with the tweet, and
you didn't agree with it.
I didn't agree with the tweet, and I've been on the record about that. I felt
you must whisper to Helen. Then.
Well, it's not my job to whisper. Well, it is my job now. It's my job now to whisper to her.
You better understand your new job now, man.
I can't prosecute, you know, mistakes that are made by previous individuals in the party. But look, I think that the important role is to recognize that job that Helen has is a very much behind-the-scenes role. It's not a frontline role, which is one of the reasons I didn't stand for it. I like to be leading from the front. It's very technical, it's very administrative, and it focuses. So
you are the leader, no messing around.
I'm the leader.
It's not overshadowing you. It's not going to be telling you what to do.
I'm the leader. I'm my own man. I don't answer to anybody. I don't carry bags for anybody else. I'm a straight shooter, and everybody in the party knows exactly where they stand with me, and that will apply to Helen as well.
Would you have preferred a black leader to still carry on the idea that we started the interview with, that having to get into the 90% of the voters, it may well be a strategic move? Not racism, not the fact that John is not capable. Everybody can see that you are regardless, right? Would you have thought that a black leader could still be a way to go?
Well, I think it's been shown that it's not. I think that we can grow, and I think that the big point here is that South Africa is in such a deep crisis with the unemployment, with lack of opportunity. People are desperate for healing and a solution.
Regardless
I don't think they care the color of the doctor. They want the.
You must be careful. I think you must stop using that example, because actually a lot of black people do care about who gets opportunities, because they're tired of a mentality that says a good surgeon is white, a good doctor is white, a good accountant is white.
I think some of the best surgeons in this country have to be black South Africans, and that's the truth.
But they are actually some of the best advocates.
And that's why it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter. As a person, it shouldn't matter what the color of the surgeon is. I need the healing, and I need the best person to be able to deliver that.
You need a lot of help on the messaging, John, honestly.
Well, JJ, are you looking for a job? I'll take you on. There we go. I've got some vacancies now.
Even this thing where you say 99% happen to be black, it's like an apologetic acknowledgement that your biggest issue in this country, whether it be health, education, will be to tackle black poverty more than any white privilege.
It's to tackle poverty, and to tackle poverty
No,
head on.
White people are poor, man.
Pardon?
But there will be 2 or 3 white people who are poor. You yourself are...
So what does it happen? Are you going to build a new school in a disadvantaged area, bring in the best facilities, and put a big sign outside that says blacks only? We're back in the 1980s.
But we know that's not the case.
But we don't need to do that.
Yeah.
We don't need to focus on people's race to provide and focus redress where it's needed most in South Africa. And that's the point.
I wish you well. I think we must still have some more debates. Please do give me an hour to come and look at next year and what you are planning and so on when I do come to Parliament before the end of the year. But I wish you well in the work that you have to do, and all the best in your double role now. Parliamentary leader, interim leader, as you go to your policy conference. And we hope to be there at your policy conference to understand how you're going to take the DA forward. But all the best.
Thank you, JJ. It's always great to be with you.
All right. John Steenhuisen there. Absolutely live wire. And of course, the DA having serious challenges that he clearly is ready to tackle. Let's take a break. After the break, Temba Maseko joins me on the Frank Talk. Let's take a break now.